Welcome to yet another Trimet 101 video that is not scripted, so I just have bullet points, but I'd like to talk about schedules that I would like to see upgraded. This is just simply updating schedules. This has nothing to do with the routes themselves and where they go this time. I'd like to talk about frequency and that sort of thing, looking at the timetables and seeing how frequently they run currently and what I would say the ultimate goal should be for these lines. Now, Trimet is not a magician and can't just magically pull funding out of anywhere and run every single bus at 7-minute frequency. That's not possible, and so things have to be prioritized. We only have so many buses, and we only have so many resources. However, I still think that after these forward together improvements go into effect, we're going to have more buses available. Trimet is going to be growing the fleet. The Columbia bus garage should hopefully become a thing soon. I don't know, we haven't really heard updates on that sort of thing, so I don't know how close to completion that is. But even so, it still, to me, seems like a lot of routes are probably not running as frequently as they should be, or there are some other schedule changes and things that I would just like to mention here. And so that is what I'm going to be doing. I am not at all saying that I expect Trimet to do this in the course of the next 2 years, otherwise I'm going to start a riot or something. Instead, just saying, after Forward Together is done, if you want that next step, that would be to probably start increasing frequency on some of the existing routes by adding more buses, more operators, and probably at least one more bus garage. So let's start with the route that inspired me to make this entire video, and that is line 97, which I have been on, I think, once. It begins at the Tualatin West Station and goes to Sherwood on Tualatin-Sherwood Road, and it seems like a fairly important route. And right now it runs during the rush hours, and, well, like I just said, it begins at the Tualatin West Station, and yet the trips are not at all timed with the west, and it almost seems to run better service in the morning than it does in the afternoon, which seems kind of backwards in my mind, and it should at least be a pretty level playing field. The buses should probably arrive or depart the Tualatin West Station and connect with the west every 45 minutes. That just makes sense. And now for all of these lines, these are routes where I would like to see frequencies running at 30-minute or better frequency. Now, don't comment on line 44 just yet. I am aware that Trimet wants to upgrade this to every 20 minutes at some point. I believe I made this script and all the bullet points for it before we knew that that was public knowledge. So that's why I have it on here as at least every 30 minutes. And yet again, I have routes and very outdated information. These bus lines are ones that I say were high priority routes to make frequent service, every 15 minutes or better. One of these has already happened, and that would be line 48, which is finally running every 15 minutes on Cornell Road. So that is awesome, but I cannot wait to see the 52, 71, and 77 also upgrading to frequent service because they definitely need it as well. These two routes were also on Trimet's Forward Together thing for frequent service routes, but I see these as lower priority. It would be nice, of course, it would be nice if everything was 15-minute frequent service, but I would say these ones are probably lower priority. I understand, I've been on line 87 during the busy rush hour portions, and it does actually get pretty busy, so I think at least on weekdays running at every 15 minutes is great. But I don't know how well that's going to do on weekends. Line 79 just never really seems that busy every time I go on it. Granted, I have not been on it in the middle of rush hour, and I've been on it on the weekends a couple of times, but it's usually about as busy as some other general bus line that isn't 15-minute frequent service. This one is a big one for me. Line 12. Because this corridor is so busy, and because it's busy enough to where a light rail corridor, which is much higher capacity, is being studied, I definitely think the Barber corridor needs more service. If during the rush hour, line 12 ran every 7 to 8 minutes, at least between downtown Portland and Tigard Transit Center, that would be amazing. However, this is already sort of going to happen through Forward Together because of how line 96 will be extended to downtown Portland during the rush hour on the Barber corridor. So it will actually be providing more service. I still hold out hope that the 96 extension through here will actually be express, only serving a stop at Barber and Bertha. But even if it doesn't, it will mean that the entire Barber corridor will get a lot of service. Line 57 I have a similar thing for because the busiest portion of TV Highway is between Hillsborough and Beaverton Transit Center. That's the busiest portion. And so having extra rush hour trips running here too, I think would make sense. So line 57 would run every 7 to 8 minutes between Hillsborough and Beaverton during the weekday rush hour. That is a lot of modifiers and things, but it would make a huge difference. Lines 9 and 72, I think definitely need those rush hour trips added back, the trippers. Line 9 would have some trips that would just go from downtown Portland to Powell and 92nd, and that's it. And then line 72 would have trips that would go from Clackamas Town Center to Killingsworth and Cully, or Killingsworth and 72nd, or whatever, the Cully neighborhood. I think those need to be brought back as well because these are very busy bus routes and they need it. The Wes. I really want to see this return back to 30 minutes. The trains are getting more and more crowded again and we just need it. Now, I have no idea how this all works because Wes operates over top of existing freight rail tracks owned and controlled by Portland and Western. It's up to them on whether or not they would allow Trimet to run the trains more frequently. They already didn't allow Trimet to run it more frequently than 30 minutes pre-pandemic. And so I don't know what sort of restrictions and constraints are in place right now, but I would like to see the West return to every 30 minutes. And if Portland and Western were being very generous, it would be nice if they could get more operators and more things and have the West run every 20 minutes if possible. It's probably not because of how Tigard Transit Center is 2 tracks and there are other areas of single track, and so I don't know if that would work, but at least, come on, bring it back to every 30 minutes. I have been waiting and waiting for that. And of course this would shuffle up schedules again, where line 97 would now have to run probably every 30 minutes to connect with the West, and all of the smart bus lines would have to change to connect with the West trains as well, and the Chariot's 80X, or what is in the future Route E, would have to connect with this better as well. So I made a video very recently on SMART's future and talking about their quite ambitious master plan. If you'd like to go check that out, I will provide a card here and you can click on that and watch that if you haven't seen it already. By the way, this whole video I'm more or less going to be talking about Forward Together and the Forward Together improvements. So, line 1 will be going away at some point, the Vermont bus that goes by Ida B. Wells High School and takes students home. That's its only purpose. But it's going to be replaced by all-day service on Vermont Street and to Gabriel Park, which I'm really looking forward to. But anyway, line 42 will be completely eliminating the Shattuck loops, which I think is a shame. So I think, and I would propose, that if there is a trip, a school tripper, that begins at the school and does the Shattuck loop, and then that's pretty much it, that I think would be more helpful. Because yes, students can walk, they can go here, they can go there, but the loop service exists already, and it would be a shame to see that go away, especially forcing the students to walk considerably further. I've also done a video where I've taken line 1 through a portion of the Shattuck loop, and you can see that the loop is pretty big. So completely eliminating service here is gonna kinda suck. I get it. Not every trip needs the Shady Loop. Just the school trippers. That would be fine. But completely eliminating it, I don't think is a good idea. Okay, this one is a little weird, but I've done it because there was some uncertainty about line 55 on Hamilton, and I think there still kind of is, and how that sort of goes through the neighborhood there west of all of that, where it goes onto 78th Avenue and Laurelwood and all of that. Well, if that ends up getting discontinued, I think some rush hour line 54s could deviate and serve Laurelwood. So it would be a 54 via Laurelwood. It would just simply do the normal line 54 route, but it would take a right onto 78th and then over to Laurelwood, and that's it. Just a little detour like that to serve the houses through there. And the reason and method of why I even came up with that is because the former line 61 out of Markham Hill would go through this neighborhood, and it provided a few more trips than just one from line 55. So having a few rush hour trips go through here, in my opinion, makes at least a little bit of sense. This is pretty low on the priority list though, so I think there are a lot of other things to focus on. And on a very similar token is line 48. So line 48 could detour via Elam Young Parkway to better serve the Intel campus and the Hawthorne Farm Mac Station. Elam Young Parkway is a U-shaped road, and so if you come off of Cornell and go through that, you're missing a little chunk of Cornell, but you're serving a lot of businesses, the Macs, and Intel, like I just said. And unfortunately, through Forward Together, line 46 will be canceled, and so there will be no service to the Fair Complex Mac Station, so maybe certain trips could also deviate to there as well. Now, Ride Connection could, and maybe should, take over line 46 here and provide some more service in this area, because it is low enough ridership, and I think is a pretty good fit for a Ride Connection service. So anyway, that would be that sort of thing. But line 48's running through this area on the head sign or whatever would just simply be a line 48 via Elam Young or via Fair Complex. This next one I want to talk about is a little weird, and it has to deal with Washington Park and the school trips. I do have an entire video planned on school trippers eventually in the future, so be on the lookout for that. But I find it a little weird. So line 63, Trimet's line 63, has these random trips super early in the morning for the high school students so that they can get to school. But then in the afternoon, there's no bus that takes them back. So what do? They have to go on the line 63 bus, go all the way to the Rose Garden, and then take the shuttle back home. So how come the shuttle couldn't just take them in the morning? Well, the shuttle doesn't begin that early. Trimet provides those trips on line 63 before the shuttle starts operating. So you have two solutions for this, because that is really super weird, taking Trimet in the morning and then taking Trimet and then the shuttle in the evening. So instead, you could just have the shuttle run earlier so that it's the same trip but in reverse. So students in the morning would go from, just take the Washington Park shuttle super early in the morning to Rose Garden and then transfer to a Trimet 63 at Rose Garden to get to school and then reverse it in the evening. Or you could have Trimet provide the weekday school trippers as well in the afternoon. So that way they're just on one bus in the morning to go from wherever they live up at Arlington Heights or whatever to the school, and then provide the evening service as well back to the Washington Park station. So it would just be for school trippers only. Either one of those solutions I think makes sense. But I would personally prefer if Trimet just ran line 63 in the early morning before the shuttle's even operating, and then when school gets out to bring them back home. I think that personally makes more sense. That way you just have a one-seat ride and you don't have to transfer. Now on to line 76. Again, these are not in any particular order. This is just the order I happen to think of them in. But I think line 76, I don't think all trips necessarily need to serve the Meridian Park Hospital. Some trips early in the morning or late at night could probably just end at the Tualatin Park and Ride, and that would probably be fine. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I just don't really foresee Meridian Park Hospital getting a bunch of riders at 11 o'clock at night. Line 8. I think there needs to be some more Markham Hill only buses that just circulate around the Markham Hill campus. In fact, I don't think it would be a bad idea to have some sort of shuttle bus that just does that. It just connects a bunch of destinations up at Markham Hill OHSU, and that's all it does. So that way, if I work up at Markham Hill, but I'm checking in at the VA hospital, maybe I walk across the sky bridge to some other building, and then I need to go to some other building, any sort of reason I need to get to a different building on campus, then I wouldn't have to just wait for any sort of bus or whatever, and I could get back to the starting point. So this is very confusing to word. So let's say I started off at the VA hospital, which is one of the first stops that you come across in the Markham Hill stops. And then I need to make my way over to, I don't know, Dorenbecker or something. And so I do that, and I take this little shuttle bus thing to get to Dorenbecker. But then I'd like to return back to the VA hospital. The only way to do that now is either on foot somehow, or you would have to take a bus all the way out of Markham Hill and then transfer to another line 8 or whatever going back into Markham Hill. And that's not really what I want to do. I don't want to exit first, go in the other direction to come back and serve the VA hospital. It would be nice to just have a circulating shuttle bus through these sort of campuses. I don't think a service like this already exists. I know I've seen minibuses up there, but I think it's sort of a dial-a-ride service and system for the hospital. Last thing I'll talk about are overnight services. I've done an entire video on this before, but I definitely think the Portland area is highly lacking in any sort of overnight services, and so having it to FX2, because, you know, enhanced bus service, lines 20, 57, and 72, and maybe the 12 as well, just makes sense, having some sort of overnight connections to get to major corridors across the area. Portland Airport also definitely needs some overnight services. It's an international airport, and there are constantly arrivals and departures happening 24 hours a day. And so having overnight service to the airport, while it's very little amount of people using it, it's very crucial and critical to get people where they need to go. The PDX parking shuttle runs 24 hours a day. I think Trimet could provide some sort of airport express bus to maybe Gateway Transit Center or something to connect with things, rather than having people Uber or take a taxi or sleep in the airport until 5 o'clock in the morning. It'd be nice to have overnight services. Well, like I said, I've made an entire video on this topic already, which I will link in the cards above. But there have also been the more recently announced MAX night buses, where the last few trips of the night and the first couple trips of the morning would be replaced with Trimet buses, which in general I agree with, because there's very, very low amounts of ridership anyways in those times of the night, and it allows more time for maintenance work and things to be done, and it eventually means that those gaps could be closed eventually on the busiest lines to provide 24-hour service, even if it's by bus, for the entire corridors. I think the blue and red lines need it the most. But like usual, this video turned out longer than it needed to, so I want to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.